Hey everybody, welcome to our press conference. Today is an awesome day. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure that we are live here, so I'm just going to test something here. And I want to make sure I can see myself on the iPad here. And I know there may be a bit of a delay, but yeah, thank you all for joining us. I have two wonderful guests with me. My name is Amish Shah. I don't know if you have all obviously have seen me in the documentary, and for those of you that are still watching the documentary, you can go ahead and pause that. I don't see this pulling up yet. Can you, let's see if people can see us. Oh, there it goes. So, yep, we are live. Cool. Ramon, say hi to everybody. Ramon, you've been an active part of Ancient Explorers since its birth, pretty much, and you know, working with Ramon has obviously been amazing. He is a huge resource of knowledge when we started Ancient Explorers, and he's the community manager, and he's been around, and he's going to help facilitate some of the conversations and the questions around the topic of Dwarka. So again, thank you so much for joining us. If you are watching the movie above, just press pause and let's pay attention here. We're going to leave the movie up for 5 more hours, and so we want to take this time to answer your questions about the documentary. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it, or maybe you've seen some of it, or maybe you just have some questions. So I'd like to introduce you to the experts that we have on board. Like I said, Ramon, and also Jason Martel. Jason Martel has been on the History Channel. He's been on Discovery Channel, Sci-Fi. He's spoken at many events. He's been doing this for over 20 years and expert in many ancient cultures and time cycles, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. So what we're going to do is, looks like we just froze or something is going on. Hold on one second, I'm just seeing something here. Let me just make sure we're good. Sorry, guys. There you go. Okay.
Make a quick joke, really funny.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Listen, Ramon, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and just tell the audience about you know, about yourselves and some background.
Well, I was going to attempt to make a quick joke in saying that sometimes I call my PC personal confuser rather than personal computer. So bear with us, folks, as modern technology does sometimes have its glitches, and we'll get started here soon.
Okay, one second.
Cool. So obviously we have Jason here, who's been a tremendous addition to Ancient Explorers. We obviously, you two were on Coast to Coast AM last night. So do you want to talk a little bit about what brought you onto the project, Jason, and why you're here?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. I'm kind of multitasking as you guys get this going, and so forgive the little Skype beeps in the background, folks.
Yeah, we're just going. So, for those of you that are on there and you still are on the page and you can hear this, if you want to refresh, we've seen that the chat box seems to kind of kill the page. So if you do see the chat box, refresh, and then you'll see us pop up again. So that's going to be the solution here. And put it in chat box if you. Okay, so it looks like a lot of our viewership is coming back. I saw the numbers drop all of a sudden, and now everyone is coming back. So yes, refreshing is helping. And okay, so we had yeah, we're getting there. So the numbers are coming back up. Okay, so it looks like we're back online. Everybody that was sorry, we do apologize, but we're gonna continue here. Let's continue here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take your questions because of the technical difficulties with that chat box that was kind of slowing down all the servers and everything like that. We took it out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have you actually post to our Facebook wall. And the Facebook wall will allow us to basically take your questions, and we'll ask them out loud, and then we'll answer them. Before we start, we've taken some important questions that we've seen just from emails that we've gotten. We've gotten all kinds of amazing feedback, and messages are pouring in everywhere. So Ramon kind of has some of those questions already prepared, so we'll start with those questions first, and then we'll get into some of the user questions, and we'll announce our Facebook page where you can go and post and all that stuff. So, Ramon, if you want to start just asking some questions, we can start chatting about some of this.
Well, I definitely want to kind of recap for those that don't know Jason and myself. It'd be a good idea to kind of talk a little bit about ourselves. Right just before we jump into all the questions.
Sure.
So I wanted to, Jason, if you don't mind, just kind of sharing how you got involved with the project, and obviously you have extensive experience in this subject matter. So if you want to share a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Ramon. Pretty much, my background is well known, I guess, through the TV show Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, and I've spent the last 19 years now looking into alternative civilizations, alternative views for ancient civilizations, trying to figure out where we really come from. So Amish and I met when our paths crossed through business connections, and quickly realized that we were also like-minded in other passionate ideas around ancient cultures and structures. And when I found out what Amish was doing with the Dwarka documentary, it really made my eyebrows raise, and realized that it was probably in our best interest to align our resources and start to build out a community, which we're now launching as Ancient Explorers.
Awesome. Hearing a little feedback there. Great. So we're really excited to have you on board. Obviously, like I said, we were featured last night on Coast to Coast AM, and we're really big fans of your experience in the field and your research, so it's really cool. For those that don't know who I am, I've been functioning basically as the community director for Ancient Explorers since its inception. I'm primarily a writer-producer, and last year I shot a documentary in Bolivia, spent some time down there doing hands-on research with some of those ancient megalithic sites, places like Tiwanaku, Machu Picchu, Pumapunku, and so my fascination with ancient technology goes back much further than that. That was definitely my first time out in the field. So when I met Amish a little over a year ago, we found out that we kind of had a common interest. He had just gone to Dwarka, I had just gone to Bolivia, so we meshed well with our desires to really dig for the truth and find out what's out there. What more evidence can we find independently, as far as independent research goes? So we joined up, and here we are, a little over a year later. We finally launched. Jason's on board. We're really excited. And so we wanted to obviously screen the film and entertain all these questions, like Amish was saying. So I don't know, is Amish, are you back? Yeah, you're back.
Yep, I'm back.
Cool. Do you want to start?
That. We just had a like, I don't even know what happened. It was just like a and then it just like rebooted. So I've been kind of get everything back to normal. It looks like everything is back to normal. Looks like when I told everyone to refresh, it looks like everyone has refreshed, and it's like the numbers shot way back up. So
cool.
Again, if you're on this page and it's going like super slow and you're not seeing this feed, just refresh. These technicalities, happen with technical stuff. So what can you do? But anyway, thank you so much again for joining us. And we're just scratching the surface with this documentary. Again, you can watch the documentary until midnight tonight. And what led me on this journey, and again, thank you, Ramon, for kind of bringing up like our past and like how we're connected to this project, because it's important. Otherwise, I would have been like, this is what I'm telling you, this is what's going on. And so my history with this has been just so deeply rooted, I guess, inside of me ever since I was a little kid. Growing up in New Jersey, I went to a temple called Dwarka Temple, and Dwarka Temple was this temple built in a YMCA, like in New Jersey, obviously, right? So I would go there and I'd like pray to God and I'd come home and I'd do all the stuff that normal kids in America would do, like play basketball and eat ice cream from the ice cream truck and ride a bicycle and all that stuff. It didn't mean anything to me. So Dwarkadish Temple is what it was called, and I was just like, okay, cool. And then eventually you get to the age in your life where you start questioning. I think everyone knows like that age that kind of like happens, right? It's like 16, 17, or maybe earlier, or maybe later for some people, but you know, you start questioning at some point in your life is what is the point and what does this all mean? And so I think I quite literally just typed in Dwarkadish into Google because I was curious as to what is Dwarkadish? Why am I going to this Dwarkadish temple? Like, what does it mean? Like, why I have to validate it to myself? Like, you know? And I think that has to do with a lot of us is like the truth seekers, is like, you know, our community that we have as truth seekers has always been so powerful, and we're so passionate about what we do, and that's really what led me on this whole entire journey as a producer and I guess a filmmaker now, and it's like all these weird terms that I'm not even like used to anymore. But it all started from that first like Google, right? And I found out what Dwarkadish Temple was. It was a temple that they found off the coast of India in modern-day Dwarka in India. So this city Dwarka actually existed in India, and I used to hear tales about it in stories, in scriptures, ancient Indian Vedic scriptures like the Mahabharata. Again, I didn't know. I just kind of didn't even question it. I was like, okay, whatever. Like these are mythical scriptures. It's just a story, so it's, you know, it's not. There's no real evidence to this. It's just, you know, everyone has always said it's just a story. It's like you take the meaning out of this story. That's what you're supposed to do. Is the interpretation, right? So I didn't really question it. And then in Dwarka, I started realizing that this place, Dwarka, may actually have existed at some point. And it became, one second, I see a reflection here. I'm just going to close this. It became very clear to me that Dwarka was a city where Lord Krishna was supposedly had lived. It was his kingdom. And there was palaces made out of gold, and there was palaces of all kinds, and you know, beautiful plants and food and abundance, basically heaven on earth, I guess you can say. And so, as I started digging in more, I was like, wow, this is interesting, and this is where he lived in Dwarka, and there was a temple, Dwarkadish Temple, that people used to go to in Dwarka, in ancient Dwarka. And then that led to more and more research. I found that they actually found a temple that was from 900 to around 1200 AD right off the coast. They started doing more excavations, and that's what led me on this whole entire journey that you see in the documentary, that led me to go to Dwarka and discover more, because as I started trying to discover more as to whether this was real or whether this was fiction or whether these stories are just made up, I needed to prove it, and I needed to actually show myself that this was real or this could be real, and that is what led me on this mission. And I have no doubt now that what the research and everything that we've done, that if we go diving and we go and we discover more of what's there and all these other locations around the world, which we're going to get into in just a little bit, we're going to discover some amazing things as a collective community, a community that we're creating here at Ancient Explorers. And so, before we get into the community thing, obviously, if you're on this page, you see the YouTube video. If you're on the YouTube channel itself, if you want to see what I'm talking about, we're going to be announcing what that is. It's ancientexplorers.com/join. And you can just go there and it'll take you right to what we're talking about. And the YouTube, our live hangout here will still be there actually on that page. So for those of you that aren't on it. Now you can go and you can order it. We'll talk about what that is in just a second, but we're going to answer some questions first. We're going to talk about some other things about some cool cultures around the world. Yeah, Ramon, I mean, that's basically it. I'm so grateful for you too. I'm so grateful for the whole entire, Deep Origins team and all the whole entire Ancient Explorers team, and the 27,000 people that have watched this documentary now. I'm at a loss for words. It's I would never have expected that something like this would catch on just based on truth, and just I didn't plan on making a documentary, which was actually like the really interesting part about all this is that I went to Dwarka just to prove it to myself for my nonprofit that my wife and I were starting, and I didn't plan on shooting a documentary. I just wanted footage of Dwarka to make myself familiar with it, and that company was just so inspired by my story that the next day there was a guy at my hotel who filmed me for the next 8 days on my journey while I was in Dwarka. So on the plane ride back, I didn't. It was such an amazing thing because I had footage for 8 days in Dwarka and my whole entire journey, and I was like, what? Why? What am I going to do with this? And what's the point of this? Like, how did I just end up with all this footage and this guy followed me around and I came here to discover something like it was just like magic. And that was the birth of like Ancient Explorers. Really, that was the birth of Ancient Explorers, and couldn't be more grateful and for everything that's been happening recently. So, thank you everybody. But yeah, let's get to the questions.
Let's talk a little bit about your experience in Dwarka, because we're going to be under the impression that everyone here has already seen the documentary, which is really exciting. So tell us a little bit about what it was like being on that beach. What kind of artifacts did you see personally, and what other artifacts do you know of specifically that have been found on that coastline?
Well, what I specifically found was it seemed like it was just some kind of pottery, a pottery shard, an ancient pottery shard, and I also picked up this thing that was right on the coast, and I've had some questions of people like, why'd you throw it back in? And you just threw it back in and you banged it together as if it was nothing. But that's not, that wasn't what I just know that it belongs there. And I truly believe that it belongs there and that our research should be done there. And so it looked like a wall, basically. It looked like a piece of wall that was broken off. And they have these walls that are washed up on shore. I wouldn't say washed up, but they're starting to get uncovered, some of them. And Dr. S.R. Rao found these in the late 60s, and he kept finding, proof of this. And it was just quite interesting that he would find more and more things. There was not just washed up on shore, but inside the actual sea. They found all kinds of things like stone anchors. They found the mudras that I didn't actually talk about too much in the documentary, which we can get to in just a bit. But that was the kind of things that we were finding on shore that I was just like, there is like this ancient kingdom just being washed up on shore here.
So there are pieces, there are fragments of things from that submerged city just kind of washing up on shore there?
Yep, it happens all the time. Basically, S.R. Rao said. I mean, he and I saw it in the documentary there. If you've seen it, I just found stuff just being washed up, and it was just it was really interesting.
So let's talk a little bit more about the story that references Dwarka. You said essentially it's an epic poem called the Mahabharata, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more in detail of your first experience with that story, and what kind of references are made in there that drew you to go see Dwarka? I mean, had to be pretty powerful stuff, right?
Yeah, the Mahabharata was always ancient scripture, that I grew up with, and there was these movies that they made called the Mahabharata movie, and there was like real people like acting like with like they were fighting in this whole war. So the Mahabharata is like this war, this epic poem that was written, and inside of there's this war, and the Kurukshetra War, and the Kurukshetra War was what took place in Dwarka. That was the where Krishna fought his great battle, and it was said that 4 million soldiers were said to have died in just a couple of days. Now, the Mahabharata, to me growing up, I was just like I'd watch the movies and I'd hear some of the stories from my parents and grandparents and other people, and I'd just be like, these are some like pretty crazy stories. Like they talk about flying chariots, they talk about using superhuman type of powers to overpower opponents, and very interesting, mysterious, mystical kind of concepts. Again,
so these are the kinds of stories that we see across multiple cultures, right? where
Yes.
there's like demigods and powerful. It seems mythological. Is that what
It
it's safe to
seems
say?
mythological, yeah, and I know Jason has some great, great, great feedback on this topic as well across the different cultures that we see this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's exactly. Is it mythological or is it just misplaced technology? And what we see across the board is ancient cultures had no layer of technology to give any description as a rocket ship or a missile. But what we see are their best attempts at describing what we understand with our modern technology to be exactly that. We are identifying clear descriptions of technological references
Hmm.
that are abundant today. So, yeah, it raises a lot of questions.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Krishna himself. I mean, I know there are some people who kind of might be skeptical because of the religious connotation of the name Krishna. But tell us a little bit about the persona of who that was according to the texts and what this could basically mean if Dwarka is really that submerged city.
Yeah. So Krishna has always, appeared to me growing up, as a god or a super being or a divine being of some sort, and every culture has that, every religion has that. There's always some spiritual being that has some kind of essence to him, right? Whether it was a divine being, a god, or a human being,
Mm-hmm.
as many from the south of India have depicted him as a human being, he still had like hundreds of thousands or millions of followers that he would, that he protected, and he built this city, and he was this like magnificent man, and
Mm-hmm.
he was a true devotee, I guess you could say, of higher knowledge, I guess. And it was always just interesting to me. Growing up, you're like, well, is he real? Is he fake? I don't, you don't know really. You're just like, it's like they talk about these like powers that they have and that they can do, and you're just like, wow, it's really fascinating. And so his story, it's a very interesting story, and the story it goes on, and it's interesting. Krishna's story is because he had protected and he was loved by so many, and that's really what it was always about across these different cultures as well. It was like the love, the spread of that love was their abundance that they were giving to everybody. So
So
whatever the
it's
belief systems are, it was just
uh-huh.
at one point there was this man or this creature or whatever, this god that had that.
So it seems like he had the quality of what a lot of people now refer to as ascended masters or
Hmm.
figures throughout time, throughout literature. I know Joseph Campbell talked a lot about this, but figures who are basically the beacons of compassion, who are also the bringers of wisdom or knowledge to a large community of people. So
Hmm.
you have other figures like Buddha and Jesus and other people
Oh
who
yeah.
have reached the
Oh,
state of enlightenment. So he was
exactly.
kind of like one of those figures in the Hindu culture, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yep. Yep. And the Mahabharata was his. Um, the Bhagavad Gita was also based upon,
Mhm.
Krishna's thing, which is more of a philosophy of life and how to perceive life, not a really religion or a way. But this is getting off topic now. But it's really cool to see the different cultures that it spans, and there's always like that one, benevolent being.
So you can see kind of the implications of this city or this find if it ends up being accurate that it is this ancient mythological city of Dwarka. It could really kind of shake things up for an understanding of religious history as well, right?
Yeah, and that brings us back to the question of why some of the excavations may have stopped and
Mm-hmm.
why some of them are not being pursued further is because of just that. There's so many religious implications because India's divided into so many states and so many castes and so many subsystems, and you can drive 2 hours away and not speak the same language as anyone there.
Wow.
And that's all across India. And India is a huge place. Imagine 1 billion people,
Hmm.
or more, living in this country with all those different faiths and beliefs and systems
So we
within
do,
that.
and we do seem to find this. Jason, you would be able to speak more to this, but we seem to find this pattern among these kinds of discoveries that could shake up religious understanding or religious stories when it comes to like the Sumerians and cuneiform, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how that connects to these kinds of discoveries?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting parallel between what Amish is talking about with this battle and Lord Krishna defending the city of Dwarka, because Dr. Ashar, am I
Dr. Narahari Acharya.
Dr. Achar
Hmm.
was able to again use these astronomical references to pinpoint a possible date of, let's say, roughly 3000 BC for these aerial battles to be witnessed.
Hmm.
So if we can actually parallel other times when man was witnessing these aerial battles, which it turns out we can, that same time frame of 3000 BC, just like we have Krishna getting in aerial battles recorded in the Mahabharata, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, Ramon, we have Sumerian epics of creation and other tales where Sumerians were witnessing these beings called the Anunnaki having similar battles.
Right.
And it seems also to be quite ubiquitous across the globe that somehow we were all witnessing aerial battles and then the gods left. Where did
Right.
they go?
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too
Uh,
because that relates directly to the Book of Genesis with references to chariots that are flying as well. Right. Elijah came in a chariot. Or I think it was a chariot of fire.
Taken up by
Um,
a whirlwind and yeah,
right. Right. So you see these very, very, almost too similar representations of what these people are seeing. But it's really cool stuff. So let's actually jump to that. We have these very vivid descriptions in the Mahabharata of Vimanas, right? Amish, can you talk a little bit about those and what's really cool just about that idea within itself?
Well, Vimanas are interesting. Vimanas are there's three types of Vimanas, or so are discussed inside the Mahabharata, and one are by spiritual means, by activating inner energy centers to activate certain powers, basically. Then there's another type of Vimana, which is more subtle, and then there's the third type of Vimana, which is aerial, and it's a mechanical aerial machine that they say that King Salva, had asked the gods above to provide a machine or something to destroy the city of Dwarka. And these Vimanas were referenced in the Mahabharata several times. So you start to question, what if they're summoning and they're using these Vimanas to attack the opponent and appear in one place or multiple places at different times, then what does that mean? And if they're shooting things from the Vimana, from the sky, into the ground from this great powerful Vimana that he had, what does that mean? And how Krishna shot it down with something that looks like a missile. So these ancient technologies that they talk about in these scriptures, are topics that are hard to comprehend and hard to grasp.
Sure.
And those are the translations, but we don't know, and they're really quite interesting when you start to dig in a little bit more and you understand some more of these cross references across different scriptures and astronomical references, and then you find archaeological proof. You have to ask yourself, did this type of technology actually exist at one point?
Sure.
That is lost in this submerged kingdom, in this lost kingdom. And so that's kind of where I believe we are going towards, is we want to start that movement with ancient explorers, is to go in there and go diving, get more information, get the permits, go to other locations around the world and spread that information. And that's really what's important, I think, to us, at least, And I know you
Yeah,
guys can.
I think you hit on a really good point, and just to kind of relay what we're talking about with this ancient technology, the really big question is, what are the smoking guns? What, beyond a shadow of a doubt, can prove that this ancient technology did exist? And you find these really cool anomalies. I know, Jason, you were talking about some stuff yesterday, but to relate specifically to India, we have like Mohenjo-daro, where they actually found these bodies, these skeletons that have been like perfectly preserved, and there was a radioactivity there. So it's almost like an atomic blast went off at some point, thousands of years ago, and it was all preserved. You could just see almost like Pompeii, where the ashes were still there. You could see all these bodies. So it's really interesting. And I know you were talking about something last night on Coast to Coast, Jason. Vitrification. Can you kind of recap that a little bit and what is interesting about that?
Well, vitrification, but also just the kind of what you're talking about there is these
Yeah.
global signs in our past of some nuclear war, and very similar in the Middle East. We have on the Sinai Peninsula, the term applies as well. Vitrification. There's this glassing effect all over the sands of the Sinai Peninsula,
Wow.
and if you were to ask a geologist, well, what could have caused all this vitrification, this
Sure.
high heat exposed to the sand that makes a glassing effect? They'd say, oh, well, there must be volcanoes, volcanic activity. And when you tell them there's no volcanoes in the Sinai Peninsula, they just kind of throw up their hands with no explanation. So, yeah, there's these signs all over the ancient past as megalithic catastrophes of some sort where high heat was discharged. The same type of high heat that seems to have been used to mold these intricate sites like Sacsayhuaman and Machu Picchu,
Yeah.
Huapunku. So, yeah, we'd have to label that as high technology.
Definitely. And I think that brings us to a really good point, is one of the biggest clues that we seem to be finding here is this astronomical correlation. So I know, Amish, you had stumbled upon some connections, and you talked about it in the documentary. The scientists with new technology were really able to start kind of applying new methods of cross-referencing data and really pinpointing if this technology did exist, and if there are some little pieces of evidence here and there, what time period did this happen? How can we corroborate a specific era for these stories to have possibly taken place? Can you share a little bit about what you came across?
Sure. So in the documentary, I shared some research by a Dr. Narahari Achar from the University of Memphis. He had gone into the Mahabharata itself and took out all the astronomical references and basically put them into modern-day astronomy software that you can use, such as Redshift and other planetary movement software. You can do it on your iPad. I mean, anyone can look and and see this kind of stuff. So it's interesting. He put it in. He backdated all the things. He backdated all the dates, and he found that this war that took place in 3067 BC.
And this is based on the description of the stars and planetary alignments in the book itself, right?
Exactly. And it talks about the retrogression of it actually talks about the retrogression of the planets. It talks about what constellation they're in. It talks about it's very specific when certain comets they see passing through. Very, very powerful information is written along with what they're seeing as a sequence of events. What they're seeing, they're writing down, okay, this is what's going on during these planetary alignments, basically. That proof in itself, with the findings that we're finding off the west coast of India, plus all the verbal tradition that's been passed down forever, basically. Not forever, but there's. I don't want to say forever because then people will hold me to that. It could be, but they've been passing this down verbally for thousands of years. Then it went into written scripture. So that in itself is very powerful. It can radically shift the way we look at time and how we perceive time and who we are as humans, because there is a history of we say in the documentary, as Michael Kramer, one of our guests, actually says that it's written in these texts that the culture of humans goes back hundreds of thousands or millions of years. And then we think to ourselves, well, we only know like what happened like 3,000 years ago and 4,000 years ago. And yeah, that's kind of where the whole like time aspect came into it, and I was just like, that's just too much proof that in this book and many other books that they talk about the Dwarka, the War of Dwarka, there's many books that were written on it, on the same subject. They reference the same astronomical references along with this city of Dwarka, along with, you know, this beautiful city and all of this proof that's showing that this place existed.
And Jason, so this relates perfectly with the Sumerian tablets. I mean, you were saying that there are tons of tablets that refer just to astronomical alignments, correct?
Yes, that's correct. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of tablets that we have in museums around the world. And I was lucky enough. Boy, I think I just realized I'm going to make an announcement in our Google Hangout here. My mind. I was lucky enough to hire a professional antiquities photographer that went to the British Museum, the Louvre, and a couple other museums, and because of his access as a professional antiquities photographer, could take photographs of private collections.
Wow.
So, through Ancient Explorers, I'm sorry I didn't announce this to you earlier, Ramon, I just touched on it. But we're going to launch the largest Sumerian archive of images online through Ancient Explorers in the next coming week or so.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so the artifacts and tablets, yes, are a great wealth of resource. And after the Iraqi war that we had, really started to raise a lot of questions about preserving that information. So having a digital archive of this is extremely important. And as we'll touch on, you know, outside of just the Sumerian culture, there are many references that we can start to use as kind of two tracks of evidence. One, as Amish and I have been talking about recently, is this, you know, astronomical data, but there's also the geological data. And I don't know if you guys can bear with me here, and forgive me if this works or not, but I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Does this actually work? Let's see. Can you guys see this Google map?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make
looks like the Giza Plateau.
Yep, I can see it.
Be working. Then I'm going to make this quick. But you know, as we're talking about the astronomical evidence, there's also, let me close this. There's also quite a bit of information of geological significance. So sites like Giza and others like Lake Titicaca, where we have Sacsayhuaman and Pumapunku, Teotihuacan, they used to lap right on the shores of Lake Titicaca. Right. Same with the three pyramids of Giza. If I zoom out, here, actually even further, wow, look at that. So you can see here the three pyramids, and the Nile is way over here. Look at the amount of distance that we have now from the pyramids to the Nile. Now, the pyramids are always spoken to have lapped up right on the shore of the Nile. Clear geological evidence can show us the meandering of the Nile River to where it is now. So there are times when we can reference geological evidence as well as the astronomical evidence and start to wonder what exactly we're looking at as far as the evidence.
I think that speaks directly to the evidence that you can find on the Sphinx of water erosion. I don't know if you can find that on other monuments there. I haven't been there myself, but I mean that's more evidence right there, right?
That's correct. And forgive me, guys, did I actually end my screen share correctly?
Yeah.
All right, that's great. But you're right. Yes, the inner walls of the Sphinx have inundated by water, and really the last time it was water of that level on the Giza Plateau of great rains or magnitudes of water, 10,000 BC, the time of a great flood. So raises a lot of questions.
So I think this kind of leads into the next point of, I'm sure a lot of people watching want to know, okay, so what's next? Like, how do we turn this into something where we can actually do stuff and actually, commit to our passion of finding out more and discovering new things and overcoming a lot of the red tape that we tend to experience as independent researchers. So Amish, talk a little bit about why we created Ancient Explorers and what the intention here is for everyone out there who's watching.
For sure. So Ancient Explorers, again, just started at, like I said, like I gave you the history of how this whole thing started, and I've always just wanted to do something out of passion and also give back in a way. So we all feel that we understand something on a deeper level, that we know that our ancients had somehow advanced knowledge of some sort, whether it was astronomical, building ancient structures, ancient technologies that they've talked about. There was something that they could do that we can't anymore. And that has become almost like, okay, searching for the truth, searching for these history books that we see out there, and almost looking at these locations around the world as clues as to rebuild our history. And Ancient Explorers' mission is to do that. As you heard Jason just talk about, preserving this information and becoming a digital archive for a lot of this type of information is our goal, and creating the community behind that, the support behind that, the people that are viewing this YouTube right now, this live cast, the people who have watched the documentary, the close to 15,000 people that signed up in the last week and a half, and the 12,000 that have been joining this movement since we started like 2 years ago, and the 130,000 fans on Facebook that we have. It's, where we have something here, and Dwarka is just scratching the surface of what we can discover. So we want to put together a community, a collective of all this information with all these experts that we have out there, and create a place where we can have that information stored in one place as a digital archive, and all the money that is generated from Ancient Explorers goes back to Ancient Explorers to record more information, to give back to everybody, and to produce something and create more of this content and feed the community to feed itself, basically. Get the community to feed itself, and go out there. As you'll see at the end of the documentary, we have a very specific six-step mission. And so it's all about using that, just the power of the internet, to spread this information, to sell different information type of products, such as membership sites that you can see on this page, or ancientexplorers.com/join. If you go to that, you'll see what I'm talking about and some of the things you get joining as a member of Ancient Explorers, and using that to go back out to Dwarka, to plan trips to Machu Picchu, to bring the community of people with us and support this thing so that we can grow it and get volunteers on board. We're going to be talking about how we're going to be going after sponsorship within the next 6 months from different companies to sponsor us so that we can go out to these ancient locations, film, come back, and put it back out on the internet for everybody. So we're looking for any form or any type of interaction with our audience, whether it's supporting us monetarily and helping us, buy some of our information and check out some of our expert information. If you really, really love this information, supporting us through connections that you may have, supporting us through gear that you may want to volunteer to certain trips that we're going to have coming up, helping us plan events and coordinating things like that around the world, all over the world, where these types of establishments are everywhere. So that is what Ancient Explorers is really, really focused on doing as a long-term, bigger picture. And so this is just the start of it. This is just like the I wouldn't say the start of it. The birth happened about 2 years ago, as you know. It's been a long journey, but we're here, and so it's about giving back, and that's really what it is about, and freeing the information and seeking the truth. And rewriting history along the way, because I think we all of us believe, even everyone on this call, is that as we unearth our past, we will discover our future. We're starting to see that things from the past are actually making sense now, and we should be following that way or that style or whatever they were doing back then, because it makes more sense. to be in tune with everything, with nature, with the world, with our inner selves. We're starting to just discover why this ancient wisdom and these structures are in place.
And I think you're hitting a really good point here, because, and this is as you're saying, this is like the whole philosophy behind why we're creating Ancient Explorers. Is we have a whole bunch of experts in their fields already on board, and if you have the membership, I know some of you probably have already signed up, I'm sure more of you will, but we have videos with Michael Cremo, we have videos with people like Michael Tellinger, Greg Braden, and these are people who are definitely progressive, outside-the-box thinkers. We have even more experts lined up that we're going to be doing interviews with, and the idea here is to take a multidisciplinary approach to unearthing our past. I mean, for so long, archaeology has just been sort of this one specific way of looking at things and one specific methodology for figuring out what's out there. And I think in order for us to evolve, and because of the power of the internet, we're able to take a geologist, take a quantum physicist, and really go out there and say, okay, what did these ancients really know? What kind of interesting theories were they applying? And then how can we use that to, apply it to future technologies? I mean, you've talked a little bit about symbols and sacred geometry, and quantum physics is uncovering all kinds of stuff that relates to a lot of ancient stuff. I mean, talk about the Sri Yantra a little bit. I mean, that's like a huge deal, right?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting as we go back into some of these other, texts, these ancient texts. We can uncover all kinds of things, such as, ancient symbols that actually produce effects on our physiology and affects our brain and the way that our brain functions and how we can use our brain and our bodies to it's really interesting that we're just starting to discover this. It's something that's very new, and it's very awesome that our ancient cultures, whether it's Hindu or whether it's Indian or whether it's South American or even African or anywhere in the world, they left clues along the way. And I know Jason has some things to say about these clues as well that we've gotten into some conversations about. But yeah, it's totally about discovering that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fun thing is, guys, is obviously we're going to take people along with us to the locations, and the people that aren't able to attend with us on location will be able to experience pretty much firsthand what you're seeing tonight.
Yeah.
What we're going to find. And as an example, let me just kind of go ahead and introduce a piece of ancient technology here live on the show.
This is the kind of stuff that we're going to be sharing,
so
and we're going to be creating at Ancient Explorers. I mean, this is amazing.
So hopefully this is viewable here, and I'm going to be careful with this. Here is an actual replica of the Baghdad battery, and this is an actual working model that was tested on camera for the Sci-Fi Channel, the History Channel, and the Discovery Channel. And this little model here, that's about 6 inches tall, generates 4 volts on camera. How it works is simply it's an empty clay pot. If you fill it with any weak acidic acid like vinegar, grape juice, or wine, and once that is interacting with this copper filling and this iron rod down the center, using a voltmeter, you can actually generate electricity. So combining this with some of the wall reliefs that we see in Egypt, if possibly in Dendera, holding up large light bulbs, here's an actual power source. So we're going to test a lot of these artifacts and look at a lot of these things at these locations and form these types of simple scientific experiments to make up our own minds.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, Jason, and this is the really cool thing about being a part of Ancient Explorers. Just for me personally, getting to meet people like Jason and all the other experts that we've had a chance to sit down with and talk to about their experiences at these ancient sites. I mean, there's really no substitute. I mean, to get a chance to sit here and ask questions to Jason about what he's experienced and hearing about these artifacts, like, it's so cool. It's really, really cool. So we want to encourage as much interactivity as possible. If you have questions, you can shoot us an email. We're very accessible. And we really want to tailor this to what you guys want. So we've implemented some really cool things with the membership. As Jason and Amish both alluded to, we're going to be planning on taking some trips in the future. And as part of a cool incentive for being a member, we'll be able to vote on where we go. You know, we'll have options, and you have the opportunity to travel with us. We'll have a full documentary crew. I mean, taking my background in documentary and Amish's experience in Dwarka, we'll be shooting a lot of this stuff and editing it into a documentary, so you have the opportunity to be part of that. We have a lot of really cool experienced tour guides around the world that we all know who will be happy to take us through and actually point out a lot of these anomalies or a lot of these really interesting pieces of possible evidence that there was this ancient technology and that there was this high civilization that understood principles about the universe that we're just barely starting to uncover. I mean, this is so cool. So, if there's anything else you guys want to add?
No, you guys, if you are interested in checking it out, you're gonna get a copy of the DVD, a physical copy of the DVD, and you get a book that we put together here at Ancient Explorers. It's a hardtop book. Don't have one here in this room. But it's a book you could just kind of put on your coffee table and has all these ancient locations in there with pictures, and it has the DVD of the movie that you see above here on the screen if you're on the Screening Live page. And those two are together, and then there's a membership site with all the other content with the experts such as Michael Cramo, Mike Tellinger, Greg Braden, Hugh Newman, and many, many others, Brian Forrester, that we're getting on board. We're just, again, scratching the surface, and we're excited to have everyone on board. I don't have much else to add. If we want to take some questions, maybe. I know that some people do have some questions. So let's do that.
We have a comment. I mean, for those that don't know, we're taking questions on our Facebook page. So if you want to just go to Facebook/Ancient Explorers and post on our timeline, we can probably start fielding some questions. We do have a comment here. Clint is saying that this really validates his feelings that he's had all his life, that we're just aware of a few pieces of this puzzle that is human history. I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, we're all here because we're trying to figure out this puzzle. We're all just really curious, and for so long there's been a little bit of elitism when it comes to discoveries and what's valid and what's not. So what we're trying to do here is not say that we're necessarily experts or that we know everything about a site, but really just to take you along on the journey with us and figure out what pieces we find and what information you can bring to the table, or someone that you know might know about a specific location or an artifact or anything like that,
Yeah, we're going to be getting the community involved a lot, because we truly believe in that, and we'd love to help facilitate that community with all of you guys on board. If you have any questions relating to Dwarka or the Baghdad Battery or anything that you've seen in this whole entire Q&A session that we've kind of just went through, please go on our Facebook page right now, facebook.com/Ancient Explorers. Post a question there. If we don't see any questions come up in the next couple of minutes, we'll just wrap up here. Jason, you want to add any last thoughts here about Dwarka and Ancient Explorers and the book and the community and the where we're going with all this and the support that we can use from every angle?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it pretty well as a team tonight, and the idea, folks, is just to understand that Amish and I and Ramon and the other people involved with Ancient Explorers are making a commitment to pursue a track of information that mainstream science doesn't quite know how to tackle these topics. So we're going to take our own independent approach and obviously get you involved. Yeah. Just like Amish went to Dwarka, there are a plethora of other sites that, with your votes, are going to literally encourage us as to the next site that we go. And we're going to have fun with the technology. There's a lot of things that we can use today, from drone technology and HD cameras, that allow us to capture footage at locations that really haven't been done before in the way that we're going to approach this, as well as continually make it live and interactive for you guys. So come on board. We're going to have a lot of fun here at Ancient Explorers.
We've got a really great question here from Alan. He says, what do you think wiped out all of this history? And I know that's a pretty loaded question. Let's start with you, Amish, and go from there.
Yeah. What do you think wiped out all of this history? Well, um, hmm, that's interesting. I believe that there was some kind of cataclysmic event that took place, that quite literally shifted what was the world at that time, basically. And I think that could have been various things. I don't know what it is, but I do believe that something had happened to the Earth around the year of 3 to 4,000 BC, and we see this from Greg Braden, from some of the research that we've heard from him, that civilizations prior to 5,000 BC, I think it was 5,000 or 5,000 years ago,
Yeah.
never really had any form of weapons or never had any form of fighting, but then all of a sudden something happened and everyone started fighting. So something had caused that to happen, and there was some kind of cataclysmic event, I believe, that just kind of shocked the world as it was at the time, and just like it
Yeah.
just, that's my thoughts. It's like,
Well, I know there's a lot of literature that refers to this cataclysmic flood. I'm sure, Jason, you could speak more to that idea. Some people say it was around 10 to 12,000 years ago. Others have different ideas. Jason, what are your thoughts on what could have wiped out all of history?
Sure. Well, I know we're wrapping up tonight's discussion, but it is a loaded question and a good one. And simply, my answer would be more in the direction of this lost cycle of time. We can see a pattern that causes, for whatever reason, the rise and fall of civilization here on Earth. And we go through a repeating system of the Dark Ages, where it's Game of Thrones style and everyone's killing each other, into what we call the Golden Age, at a point where these ancient Mahabharata tales from ancient seers called rishis were able to interpret things in the universe and say that we reach a point where we're able to literally interpret God. So, in my opinion, it's very possible that we can look at the timetable just as it is even now and see that we're at 2012, or excuse me, 2014, that if we go back just a couple thousand years, we're in the Dark Ages, and we didn't even know until the time of Copernicus and Galileo that we actually orbited the sun. But somehow, if we go a little bit further back into our past, at around 4,000 BC or even 2,500 BC at the Egyptians or Sumerian, we see evidence of high architecture and high astronomy, clear evidence that they know we orbited the sun, yet we go into the Dark Ages, forget it all, and now we're relearning it. So it could be some type of cyclical pattern that allows us to forget all this sacred, lost knowledge of interaction with these beings and the ability to create all these monuments we see around the world.
Great. Yeah, I know we're wrapping it up. I definitely agree with both of you on a lot of those accounts. Obviously there could be some forensic evidence of the cataclysmic flood, and then we have that macrocosmic view of the cycles of time, which I know Jason will go into, I'm sure, more in the future. And then, of course, we have the microcosm of how does that reflect, if we live in a fractal universe, how does that apply to different agendas that are going on? I know a lot of people talk about conspiracy theories and things like that. So there's so many facets to it. I'm sure it's a combination of a number of things. But really good question, Alan. Really, really good question. I think we're pretty much wrapping up for tonight. Amish, do you want to close us out with some thoughts?
I see there are some questions coming in.
Cool.
So let's see, have some underwater archaeology. Okay, so what we'll do after this call is we'll just get back to you via the Facebook page, and we'll create some of the conversations right on our page, right on this page actually. And I know just for everyone's time's sake, I know it's getting late and it's kind of random times across the world. But thank you guys very much for joining us here. And ancientexplorers.com/join. If you do want to join, it's $49.95, and then there's a monthly charge after 60 days, so you can check out the membership site, check out all the content. A month, $9.95 a month if you want, or you just cancel it and there's no charge, or you can refund as well. So we're really just creating this to give back and create a bigger bigger impact on this world, preserve this information, give back, and join us. It's a great talking piece, when you show this documentary and this book that you have, and you'll be the first in the world to actually own it. So that's pretty cool too. And this thing is going to be around forever. We're not going anywhere. I think all three of us made that pact from the beginning.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I'm excited for everybody to be joining me on this journey. Coast to Coast is picking it up, and we're getting a lot of exposure. So this is just the beginning. Thank you guys for your support. We will be making more updates. ancientexplorers.com/join, or if you're on the page already, you can just scroll down and you'll see what some of the things you get are. And that's it. I really appreciate everyone's support. And this is, again, just the beginning. Any resources, anything you can help out with, we would love to hear from you. Message us on our Facebook page. Send us an email. Talk to us. We're here. We're here with open ears to see how to make this thing bigger and better for everybody. So that's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Jason, for joining today. And yeah, thank you, everyone else that's out there. And that's it. If you guys want to continue to watch the movie, watch the movie. It's up there. It's been getting great feedback. So watch it out. Watch the movie, and you can watch a replay of this right on this page when this is done. And the rest of the information's on the page. Thank you for your support. We will see you guys soon.
Gentlemen, have a good night.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Take care.